So this right here is a tweet from the UFC fighter Israel Adesanya, where he says, "The sun of Africa is the same sun that lights up our planet. The sun will set and will rise again until you walk into it. The sun, enjoy it while it shines. Darkness falls when it's gone." So this is going into Osiris, the understanding on many different levels is esoteric at heart, just based off of the references, the illusions. The sun of Africa, that's talking about Osiris. Osiris is also known as Nimrod. Nimrod is the son of Cush. Cush is the son of Ham. Ham is the progenitor of the Africans that we know of today. It's just that a lot of people don't understand this type of information. But this goes back to Nimrod. In ancient Sumer, that's what he was known as. In ancient Egypt, he was known as Osiris and Horus, the sun god. The reason why he was known as the sun god is because he was a great teacher. And the sun is synonymous with teaching, enlightenment. That's what the sun represents. It's not going into the actual worship of the sun. It's going into the understanding of what alludes to the sun, that being enlightenment. That's why they push the sun motif in this society so hard. Because just like Israel Adesanya tweeted, the sun of Africa is the same sun that lights up our planet. What is that in reference to? It's talking about the influence. The influence of this society goes back to the worship of the sun god. That's what it's about. This society is heavily inspired by the worship of Nimrod or Osiris, the sun god. It's just that it's represented in a certain way. It's conveyed in a certain way because, a lot of people don't really understand things on a covert level. So if it's pushed on an overt level, it'd probably be too much for people. Or it may not. People still may not be able to put it together. And it's not to demean the intelligence of people. It's just that a lot of people aren't privy to this type of information. It's just not. When you understand the scriptures, it's easy to understand. It's definitely easy to understand. The sun god is in reference to Nimrod, aka Osiris. Nimrod had a mother named Semiramis, and that was also his wife. That's how they get down in Africa when it comes to incest and all types of things that's aside from, what the commandments were given to in regards to the people that was in Africa. The reason why I'm going into this is because you had to have these laws based off what was going on in Egypt when we was held captive there. You had incest, you had all types of just unsavory things that was going on. Aside from, the sexual aspect, they practice flagellation where they flail at themselves. They'll flail on themselves because it's in reference to the worship of Nimrod or Osiris. He was cut up into pieces by Set. Set cut him up into pieces, and that represented his death. This is why you see certain Africans, they have scars on their faces because it's based in flagellation. When it talks about thou shalt not cut ourselves for the dead, I believe that's in Leviticus where it talks about not cutting yourself for the dead. That's going into the worship of Nimrod or Osiris. Not only was he known as the sun god, he was also known as the god of the dead. This is why in this tweet here, you see it says, the sun, enjoy while it shines. Darkness falls when it's gone. Because it's going into the same altar or the same conveyance or the same pagan god, that being Osiris or Nimrod. Now, Nimrod was a person who lived on the earth, but he was worshipped. Therefore, he was paganized. Many different regions, like Jupiter, Zeus, Saturn. All this stuff goes back to the antediluvian forebearers and the post-diluvian forebearers, including Nimrod, Cush, Ham, Semiramis, going back to Adam, Eve, Methuselah, Lilith, so on and so forth. These are the antediluvian forebearers, that being the ones who was there before the flood, and the post-diluvian forebearers, the ones that was there after the flood. And Nimrod was worshipped as a god because he was a mighty man on the earth. He, along with Cush, were the original Luciferians because they built the tower. The tower represented pretty much them trying to be God, taking the place of the Most High and teaching the people, on the earth, things that are opposed to the Heavenly Father. That was the Tower of Babel. They were the original Luciferians. They wanted to be God, right? They wanted to encapsulate all the prophetic aspects of the Most High and His Son. This is why in this society today, what do they push Yahushua as, or Jesus Christ? They associate Jesus Christ with the Son because that represents Nimrod, Osiris. It's just not overt. The reason why it's not overt is because of the amalgamation of the pagan teachers and the biblical teachings in regards to 325 AD with the Council of Nicaea. That's where the confusion comes from, and you can read that in 2 Thessalonians. That's where the mystery of iniquity goes back to. Mystery Babylon, as well as the Council of Nicaea, because the Council of Nicaea draws inspiration from Mystery Babylon. This is where Constantine, he got that inspiration from, where he saw the cross in the sky. The cross representing Osiris. That's what it represents. The cross represents Osiris. When it comes to the understanding of the crossroad, and the X representing the unknown, the hidden god, Osiris. Osiris is not just known as the sun god, but when it comes to the conveyance in regards to people's association with that belief system, they push it in many different ways. Saturn and the sun is interchangeable. Saturn is dark, the sun is light, but it's interchangeable. That's why Osiris is known as the sun god, as well as the god of the dead. That's Osiris. When you look at Star Wars with Darth Vader, that represents Osiris. That represents Osiris, right? Osiris is known as the sun god, as well as the god of the underworld, or the god of the dead, right? The sun of Africa is the same sun that lights up our planet. This planet is galvanized by the worship of Nimrod in every aspect. In every aspect. It's just that people don't understand it. Like, when you think about the holidays, it goes back to Nimrod. The reason why they commemorate Christmas, that goes back to Nimrod. Christmas is in reference to the worship of Nimrod, not Jesus Christ. Not Jesus Christ. When they talk about Jesus Christ being born on December 25th, they're not talking about the real Christ. They're talking about the person that wanted to be Christ. That being Osiris or Nimrod. The reason why I say or is because he was known as Osiris in another region, in Egypt. In Nimrod, he was known as, in ancient Sumer, he was known as Nimrod, or the Chaldees, Babylon, right? Cush in Egypt was known as Manes. Manes represents the numberer. This is why numerology is significant in this society, because it goes back to the worship of Cush or Manes. And it's crazy because the term Cush, it means black, right? So these people, these original Egyptians, they were so called black, but they was not of Israel. It's a difference. That's why the Most High says he doth put a difference between Israel and Egypt, because he understood that we were all melanated, but we were different. We were different, right? So the sun will set and will rise again. The rise aspect is going into who? Horus or Heru. Horus, Heru is Osiris. Is Osiris, right? Heru is known as the sky god. So the rising aspect is based in that. Until you walk into it, the sun, enjoy it while it shines. Darkness falls when it's gone. So the sun will set, representing the aspect of Set, putting Osiris on trial for what he did. And also going into the aspect of the worship, the veneration system. So Israel Adesanya is someone who's a Luciferian, and it's not to demean this brother, it's just the truth. He's a Luciferian. He worships Nimrod. You see the sun motif, the color yellow, all this stuff is plain. So I just wanted to go into this excerpt from an article, just proving my point in regards to what most brothers already know, but it's important to just go through it in regards to the understanding, the information. Two key figures in the origin of Christmas are Nimrod, a great-grandson of Noah. Yet Noah was one of the preservers during the flood. He was one of the preservers. The Most High blessed Noah, along with Noah's sons and wives, and one of his sons, that being Ham, had Cush, and Cush had Nimrod, right? And Semiramis was also one of the ones that was saved. Semiramis, also known as Ishtar and Isis. Ishtar, right? That's where you get Easter from. Easter is in commemoration of Semiramis, or the mother goddess, the divine feminine principle. Going into the mother of Nimrod, right? Nimrod is known as Osiris, like I said, in Egypt, and Ishtar or Isis, Semiramis, right? Isis was thought to have immaculate conception for Osiris, and that's why he was known as the sun god. This is why they push that immaculate conception on so-called Jesus Christ, because it goes back to Osiris or Nimrod. That's what it goes back to. So continue reading on. Also known as Ishtar and Isis, Nimrod, known in Egypt as Osiris, was the founder of the First World Empire at Babel, later known as Babylon, the land of confusion, which you can read in Genesis chapter 10, 8 through 12, and chapter 11, 1 through 9. From ancient sources such as the Epic of Gilgamesh and records unearthed by archaeologists from long-ruined Mesopotamian and Egyptian cities, we can reconstruct subsequent events. After Nimrod's death in circa 2167 BC, Semiramis promoted the belief that he was a god. Yet not only a god, a sun god, right? She claimed that she saw a full-grown evergreen tree spring out of the roots of a dead tree stump, symbolizing the springing forth of new life for Nimrod, also going into Tammuz, which means to be purified by fire. That goes into the worship of Nimrod as well. On the anniversary of his birth, she said Nimrod would visit the evergreen tree and leave gifts under it. This is where you get Christmas from, right? This is where you get Christmas from. His birthday fell on the winter solstice at the end of December. Because Yahushua, who they call, Jesus Christ, he was born around the time of the Passover. There was no such things as months around the time where we were living, but I think it was around the time of Yahushua, because that's when the Romans started to take over. But he was born around the time of tax season, the Passover. A few years later, Semiramis bore a son, Horus or Gilgamesh. She declared that she had been visited by the spirit of Nimrod, who left her pregnant with the boy, Horus. She maintained was Nimrod reincarnated with father, mother, and son defied, a deceptive, perverted trinity was formed. Semiramis and Horus were worshipped as Madonna and child. This is where you get the whole mother and child motif, that whole aspect of Christmas with mother and child. It goes back to Nimrod and Semiramis, or Osiris and Isis. That's what it goes back to. Ishtar and Gilgamesh. All the same composition of the people that came from Ham. And Ham's wife, that being Semiramis. Ham and his son shared the same woman, which is just freaky and crazy, but it just shows you how ancestral and how that nature was when it comes to those people, those native Africans, just being real, right? So as the generations passed, they were worshipped under other names in different countries and languages. Just like I always tell y'all these things, I'm just reading this because this is something I found on the internet, but this is what I already knew, just based off of my understanding over time for 14 years, diligently studying these things. This is just confirmation, right? I always mention these things. Madonna Chaza, in generations past, they were worshipped under other names in different countries and languages. Many of these are recognizable: Fortuna and Jupiter in Rome, Aphrodite and Adonis in Greece. See, these people were worshipped in different regions. It all goes back to ancient Babylon. It all goes back to ancient Kemet. Like the Greco-Roman aspect, all that stuff goes back to the people that lived on the earth in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. They just different versions of the people that lived on the earth after the flood. That's what it is, right? Like Baal was just going into Nimrod. Baal is the sun god, or Baal, however you want to pronounce it. Baal, right? Fortuna and Jupiter in Rome, Aphrodite and Adonis in Greece, and Ashtoreth, Astarte, and Molech. Yeah, Molech is also known as Baal. Molech, 6'6". That's associated with Molech. Molech is the sun god, or the bull god. The bull is associated with Baal. Chicago Bulls. The reason why you see a lot of celebrities wear Chicago Bulls hat is not only because of style, but it also represents the worship of Nimrod or Baal. That's what it is. The colors red, black, and white is associated with Pan. Pan is associated with Baal. Pan is just another version of Nimrod or Cush, because, like I said, it goes into the inspiration behind the antediluvian forebearers, the ones that survived after the flood. They were known as pagan gods. During the time between Babel and Christ, pagans developed the belief that the days grew shorter in early winter because their sun god was leaving them. When they saw the length of the day increasing, they celebrated by riotous, unrestrained feasting and orgies. This is where you get like Valentine's Day from, or Christmas and all that stuff, right? This celebration, known as Saturnalia, was named after Saturn, another name for Nimrod. This is what I always mention to you brothers, right? The Saturnalia goes into, Christmas, as well as Saturday, Saturn's Day. It all goes into the worship of Nimrod. This whole world is galvanized by the worship of Nimrod, the sun god, the god of the dead, the goat god. That's Nimrod. That's Nimrod. The Baphomet goes back to Nimrod and Cush, because they ruled in co-regencies. But the reason why I'm emphasizing Nimrod is because there is more influence from Nimrod, right? More influence from Nimrod. Even though numerology goes back to Cush. Cush was known as Pharaoh Manes. Nimrod was known as Pharaoh Narmer, right? Nimrod also represents the subduer of wrath, Narmer Mered, so all this stuff is based in the veneration of the people that live after the flood, the ancient Africans, the real native Africans. This is why Africa is worshipped so heavy in this society. Just when it comes to Hollywood and how they push them, it all goes back to the worship of Nimrod. This society replicates ancient Egypt. And who was the ruler, who was the, the person that was influential the most back in ancient Egypt? It was Nimrod.